Hi there, my name's Jon Ryman, Senior Solution Consultant for EasyVista, and today we're going to take a quick look at EasyVista's Asset Lifecycle Management functionality. So here we are in EasyVista's core solution, Service Manager. This is the core solution really for the back office role. I'm logged in as a service desk manager here, and in this profile that I've put together, I have access to a number of different modules, but one of them is the Asset Lifecycle functionality that we have here. So if I just open that folder up, we can see that EasyVista is covering the full life cycle of all assets from cradle to grave, really from a logistical perspective and from a financial perspective. On the logistical side, we're covering things like order management, so you can order assets in the solution tied to a supplier and then do intake of those assets using barcode integration if required, right through to then once they're in your estate, managing that life cycle of changing, upgrading, repairing, loaning, right through to discarding assets at end of life and having a process for that. And then on the financial side, we're doing things like depreciation and chargeback and contract management, renewal, etc. out of the box as well. Of course, what lay at the heart of all asset management solutions really is the inventory. So if I click on that, we're going to have a list of assets in our estate here. The classification of these assets and the type of assets that we have is unlimited and completely codelessly configurable. So here I have some assets that I've put into some buckets here, like facilities, IT, mobile and retail. But like I say, that's totally flexible, and it is also usually hierarchical. So underneath IT, I would have different types of IT asset, whether they be desktop or server room based, but I'm just going to pick on one particular one that I know well, which is a desktop computer. So if I just go through to my desktops and open up this one, we'll see one asset in more detail now. Now, in terms of the field assignments that we have for assets, again, that is flexible. But also it is flexible as per the type of asset that we're dealing with. So here I have a desktop computer, but the fields could be different based on the classification of that asset if required. Base sort of foundation information would be in here as to the make, model, serial number, etc. And then obviously we would want to link that to a user. Typically that is done automatically when we integrate the user data in and the asset data in, where the user is the same in both data sets. We would link those two together. Warranty information is often integrated to enrich that record, whether that be getting that via API from a supplier website or from a vendor website, or whether it's just from a spreadsheet or another database. We'd like to bring in that warranty information, alerts and notifications of course available for that stuff. And then if I keep scrolling, again we can enrich this with financial data about who supplied that asset to us, is it owned or is it leased, for instance, on the acquisition type, and then get into some other calculations around things like depreciation. If you want to set rules for depreciation and then have a net or residual value for that asset based on that schedule, we can automatically calculate that. Then if I just bring your attention over to the right hand side, we have an area called related elements here, and in here we can cover anything from the software that's installed on that device to the contracts that are related to that piece of equipment through to the tickets logged against it. But one area that I do think is super important here, and I'm just going to expand this, is what we call the history of changes. Not just knowing where your asset is today, but knowing its full life story, if you like, I think is key to the idea of managing assets from cradle to grave. And also for compliance reasons, this could be really important to have that in there. So anytime any of the information changes related to this asset, it's going to add a line of history in here to say when that happened, who changed it, or perhaps what changed it, because it could be an API or some sort of integration that's bringing in that update, and then what was changed and what the old value was, and if I just scroll along here, and what the new value is in here as well. So having that life story and making it reportable, I think all important in here. One other thing I do want to bring up is if I just scroll down in here into the contracts area, contracts, I'm just opening that contract record up, are a totally separate record set in EasyVista with its own process around that. So it's not just a field in a form. Here we take contracts extremely seriously in the solution, and of course those contracts will have an owner. So Carl here would be responsible, could be a group of people responsible for this, in this case a maintenance contract, but it could be any type of contract. And that contract would have a start date and of course an end date. And when the end date for the contract is approaching, alerts, notifications, perhaps even the triggering of a workflow to manage the renegotiation of that contract, really important in here. So I think for a phase one rollout of Asset, I always like to see contract management in there because it's a quick win really. One last area I would like to bring your attention to are our series of smart automations that we have in here, what we call wizards. They are fantastic for managing one asset, but they're even better for managing groups of assets. So if I go back to my list of assets in here and break that down to perhaps just the servers in here, so now I'm limiting that with the filter there. So I have now 213 servers. I can select all of those and then apply one wizard to all of them. And that might be to update a few fields across those assets, do like a global update and adding that history to the record to say I've updated those fields. It may be to move that asset or move those assets from one location to another, taking into account all of its associations. But one that I do think that is really important here is the discard wizard. So if I was sunsetting all of my servers here, I might want to put them into a decommissioned status or a recycled status, set a recycling contractor for that. I may want to detach its associated contracts. I may want to take it out of its current location, all of those servers, and say that I'm going to put them into a storeroom somewhere, and we'll say Salt Lake City there. And now I might want to delete their relationships with other assets. I may want to detach their owners or users, add my comments, and then when I click on next, it would take into account not just the assets themselves, but their associations with other records like contracts and locations and users, but perhaps also trigger a workflow to manage the different steps that I need to go through to decommission or end of life those servers.